Happy Media Day, Magic fans. Today was filled with a ton of great quotes, weigh-ins, what have you. The Orlando Magic had their media today, earlier today, that is, in Orlando in their facility, and there were plenty of great moments, but the biggest moment that stood out to just about everybody, just about all of the Magic fans, was Paolo Banchero setting expectations for the NBA season. We're going to get into what exactly he said today and how that is going to potentially affect the Orlando Magic season and how the media views them this year. All right, but first, if you haven't subscribed, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. It's the easiest and best way to support us here at Magic Digest. Now, we're trying to build an Orlando Magic basketball community, and we have the preseason training camp right upon us. Today was Media Day. Huge for NBA fans. We've all been in our shell a little bit over the last month or so. Only been going over mock trades, all this other fake fantasy stuff. Now we're getting to the real stuff, at least the pictures and the interviews, what have you. All right, so what exactly did Paolo Banchero say today about his expectations for the team? Well, he first started with kind of a retrospective. He said, my first year was rookie of the year. My second year was all-star. But I think really what I want is to get to the Eastern Finals, get deep into the playoffs. This is actually a very, I would say, on-point goal. I think this is very much looking ahead to what a lot of, maybe further ahead than what a lot of media members might put the Magic at, but I like it. I'm all for it. I'm very much a fan of this sort of team-oriented goal, and I don't really think this is too far-fetched. I will say that this team needs to be better than a couple other teams first before they can make that jump. They got to go through the Cavs, right? Just lost in the first round of the playoffs, but I like it. I would say that this team has the ability to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think they have the ability to beat the Celtics right now. I don't think anybody in the NBA, frankly, has the ability to beat the Celtics, but I do think that this team can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I love to hear that from Paolo Banchero. And obviously going into his third year, this would put him in an upper echelon or in the upper echelon of the players in the NBA. And I think a lot of people expect him to take that next step. Now, he did have a ton to say at this media day, as well as some other stories that we're going to get into in future videos. But he also mentioned if we get knocked out in the first round again, I don't think anyone would be feeling like a success. Now, that's him on expectations for this coming season. As I've mentioned just a second ago, wants to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, but if you don't get there, what is a success? What is, you might fall below the expectations, but what exactly are you going to deem a success? Well, he's saying, hey, look, we better at least get out of the first round. And I think that this is a very valid kind of ballpark, if that makes sense. Because sometimes whenever we see players make expectations or make these big claims, it doesn't really make all that much sense in kind of the complete perspective of the season, right? Some people might say championship or bust, all this other stuff. Well, he's saying, hey, look, we want to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. That is what this team is capable of. Maybe not the ceiling, because no player is going to outright say that's the ceiling for the team, but that is what we can do. With Jalen Suggs potentially rising to the occasion, being that number one point guard, getting paid probably $30+ million. Franz Wagner coming off of the Olympics. Me, myself, and Paolo Banchero is what he's saying. I'm going to be that next number one guy, the franchise guy. He already is, but gonna rise into that role. This big three, all these bench players, this great defense. Jamahl Mosley, better than the bottom half of the coaches that I mentioned that list from previous videos. We're all here. We can be better. We can get to that point. We can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. It makes sense. But what would be a failure? Well, I mean, I guess any season that's not a success is probably a failure. You're kind of getting a pass-fail grade here. It would be losing in the first round of the playoffs. When I look at some of the teams that would be in that mode, in that range, I don't think a team like the Magic, if you're aiming for a home court advantage, so top four seeds are going to play the Sixers, the Celtics, and at least in the first round. You probably play one of them in the semis. I don't know where the Pacers, the Bucks, I'm forgetting some teams, the Heat maybe even. I don't know where those teams are going to end up. I know I'm forgetting one of the teams. It'll come to me in a second. But I don't know where those teams are going to end up. But you're going to have to beat potentially one of them in the first round. The Cavs, can't forget them. You did just lose to them in the first round. They're pretty much bringing back everybody else anyway. So you're going to have to beat one of those teams in the first round of the playoffs. You know that you have to do that. I think you can beat any of those teams in the first round of the playoffs. You got the Knicks. That was the team I was forgetting. That would be a tougher matchup for sure, especially now that they just acquired Cat. That's a huge move. Whenever you match up against these teams, you got to think, as the Orlando Magic, we're kind of looked over a little bit as the young team, the new kid on the block a little bit last year. The expectations were lower. This year, when you compare them to those teams, you might still think, hey, look, this Magic team is new, hasn't really been very competitive since the Dwight Howard era past the first round. This is a little unusual, but when you compare them to those teams, you got to think they can take any of those teams, at least in a 7-game series. Now, of the teams I just mentioned, because there's a big jumble of teams, I don't know exactly what the odds are in the first round if we play I don't think we would play the Celtics. That would be a disaster of a regular season if we matched up against them, because I'm assuming that the Celtics get the first 2 seeds, and the 76ers or the Knicks are maybe right 1, 2, 3. Those 3 in that order, or not in that order, somehow jumbled is what it's going to be. You want that 4th seed. You want to play Pacers, Bucks, Cavs, Heat, potentially, whatever they can muster up this year. You got to beat one of those teams in the first round. But I understand what he's saying, where it wouldn't be a success. But we'll have to see exactly where that could end up, or where we would end up as far as the first round goes. But when we look at some of the teams that we could play in the second round, I think that it makes sense. Behind Paolo Banchero, if we match up against the Knicks or the Sixers, I do think that we can beat them. Now, I mainly would say this about the Knicks, that we'll have to see how Karl-Anthony Towns pans out, and we'll have to see for the Sixers how Paul George pans out. But I think that this team is talented enough. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about, just in general, Paolo Banchero as a player and how he can kind of elevate his game into that next level. So last year he was, as he mentioned, all-star. That was kind of his ceiling. He wasn't really going to be in that Anthony Edwards type of tier where he is taking over playoff series. We didn't see that exactly. We need more support for him. But last year, 23 points per game, 7 boards. 3-point percentage was pretty decent. Certainly his field goal percentage and his efficiency was much improved. And that was one of the biggest things, where he kind of dialed back the shots almost even, like almost a little bit even, and his points per game went up. That was super promising. Now, can he elevate himself this upcoming year to be that Anthony Edwards, or even Luka Doncic type of level, where he's taking over playoff series? Jason Tatum, we saw this early in his career, and I know that his stock isn't exactly the greatest as of right now, but we saw it early in his career. Can he do that? This team goes as far as Paolo Banchero goes. I do also have to preface that the rest of the Magic team needs to improve, especially on offense, to support him. Franz Wagner, get his shot right. Jalen Suggs, we're going to need more facilitating from him. But Paolo Banchero is the engine that drives the Orlando Magic. There's no doubt about it. When we take a look at the teams outside of the Celtics, I think they have a shot at anybody in the Eastern Conference. I don't think that these quotes are unfounded without any sort of reason, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, I did want to mention some other quotes before we get out of here. We don't want to be the same as we were last year. We want to improve in all areas. That was very basic expectation jargon from him. If we get knocked out in the first round, it won't be feeling like a success. I mentioned that one earlier. Goal is to make the Eastern Conference Finals. He's kind of just going through everything. Has eyes on the Magic earning home court advantage. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. He wants to become more efficient this season, maybe more efficient than he was obviously last year. We saw those numbers, 45% from the field, 34% from 3. That can always improve. Worked out with Kevin Durant, says that is kind of one of his main motivations for that. And then he's not focused on individual accolades. More team success. And I like how he was very honest about his Rookie of the Year for the first season. You know, the Magic didn't exactly have very many team-oriented goals that were lofty that year. They were still trying to figure everything out, rebuild around him, and he said he wanted to kind of establish himself. I like that honesty. But guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Is the Eastern Conference Finals something that is within the realm of possibility, or is this just regular old media day talk? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, but that's all the time I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time with more Orlando Magic basketball content.